Luke Fehee.
Mission Viejo, California.
Oh,
an old rival high school of mine growing up. Why can't Irvine High ever produce anybody? Why is it always got to be Capistrano Valley? Why is it always got to be Mission Viejo? But Luke Fehee is, a talented quarterback. Maybe, maybe a little undersized at just 6 foot. We know that everybody likes their quarterback 6'3", but Julian Sayin isn't 6'3" either. So, I think you need to look at his entire body of work. But he's a national 4-star according to the 247 composite, which I think is a good measuring stick. It factors in what everybody is kind of saying about him. But he grew up as an Ohio State fan, which means that based on him being 17 years old, I mean, who was he watching as a kid? Justin Fields. But really talented kid. Good arm talent. I think that this is a good pickup, especially with Ohio State having Brady Edmonds a year behind him. You kind of had to find the pieces that were all going to fit the puzzle of everybody that would coexist. Quarterbacks understand they're going to have to beat out other quarterbacks to get the brass ring, but sometimes when you already have your quarterback a year ahead committed, it makes it a little bit more dicey getting the quarterback for the current class locked up and in class. But I expect Fehee to be somebody who honors a commitment, not farts around at the end, and that Ohio State's left looking.
Yeah, I like what I see here. He's thrown for 43 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. It says here that he threw 137 passes in 11 games this past year and did not throw an interception. So I think that is something that Ryan Day and Billy Fessler probably are looking at. They won a state championship the year before in 2023 when he was a sophomore, and he threw for 26 touchdowns in 16 games and also rushed for almost 500 yards as well. So he's a tough kid with a lacrosse background, and you know how the lacrosse guys have checked out sometimes at Ohio State in terms of football. So I like Luke Fehee's makeup, his background, and I think he's the perfect, Keenholz, let's just say, for this class. Not to pigeonhole him in as a career backup or anything like that, but I think that's the methodology here. You get a supposed great quarterback one year, you get a guy who can provide depth the next year, you get a supposed great quarterback the following year, and it's just the way that it falls in there. And who knows, if you hit it just right, maybe your Keenholz or your Fehee turns out to be a 2 or 3 year starter and you win some modicum of a championship with him. So either conference or national. But I think for Ohio State, this checks a box that they don't have to worry about a quarterback now in the 2026 class. They don't have to worry about quarterback depth for next season either.
Every year I try to write and update my Ryan Day quarterback timeline, and I just updated it this week. And from the time that he arrived at Ohio State as the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator, Ohio State has now signed, landed transfer or received a commitment from 21 different scholarship quarterbacks, Luke Fehee, the most recent. And out of all of that number, I think so far Ohio State, Ryan Day has had 5 starting quarterbacks that he's signed. So you've got Justin Fields, and then C.J. Stroud, and then Kyle McCord, and then Will Howard, and then this next year will be Julian Sayin, we assume will be number 5. So anytime you get a quarterback commit, the question is, well, when's he going to play? And in today's age, you're more likely to not play at the school that you sign with than you are to play at the school that you sign with if you're a quarterback, and still room to go before he actually signs. But certainly one that they wanted to get. They wanted a quarterback in 2026, and they were working hard to get that guy, and finally they seem to have gotten him. But it takes a lot to be the guy that commits, then the guy that signs, and the guy that actually plays. And so it requires a lot of patience and a lot of hard work. And at quarterback, Ohio State has been very lucky that Devin Brown stayed as long as he did. Lincoln Keenholz has stayed as long as he did and not win jobs. It's just pretty rare anymore. So I'll be interested to see what happens with Luke Fehee and really with any of these quarterbacks, because even Julian Sands going to have, Tavian St. Clair pushing on him. And if Julian Sands not outstanding at the outset, then Tavian St. Clair, people are going to be clamoring for him. So it's always interesting to me to watch the quarterback position and how you assume guys are going to be the guy and then never really comes to fruition. But certainly, as I said, as I start to ramble, a guy that they needed because they needed a 2026. They want one every year, and they may have to go get two in 2027 just to keep up with transfers and whatnot.
Not nearly as easy to size up these quarterback rooms as it used to be, where you would have your starter and maybe he's a junior and maybe you don't think he's going to go to the draft. So you can say, well, he's going to be the starter next year. And then you got the hot shot coming in, and then you got the dependable backup, and you got it kind of all lined up for about 2 or 3 years. And then you can progress from there based on the recruiting classes. But there's something called the transfer portal. But if everything goes as scripted, saying is 25, 26. And if he's that outstanding, then he moves on to the NFL, and then St. Clair in from there, I guess.
That's the idea. But it's you would want Sand for more than 2 years as a starter. Ideally, you don't want him necessarily leaving as a redshirt sophomore last year. That's what CJ Stroud did, and it kind of sets them behind. And that's what Dwayne Haskins did, and it set them behind. But if they stick around, then you lose the guy that's behind them waiting. Like if you get 3 years of starting out of Julian Sain, you might not get any years of starting out of Tavian St. Clair. And that's because he might, is he going to want to wait that long? We are a long time removed from Todd Beckman gray shirting to give him 2 years of distance between himself and Troy Smith back in the day. Gray shirting and then red shirting. Good luck with that.
Yeah, the ideal number is you want a quarterback to be playing 2 years, and hopefully that you're able to keep the churn working properly that way. But one of the issues under Ryan Day, and it's because you keep having like 1 year quarterbacks, save Justin Fields. You need to play them as much as you can because they haven't played a lot of football, but you then don't have necessarily a ton of experience with your backup. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. How do you handle it? We've seen that generally, in order to be successful in the NFL, you need to have closer to 2 years of playing time as a quarterback in college. So if Ohio State is going to be any sort of QBU, they need to figure out how to change those numbers a little bit. But, we saw Ohio State kind of struggle to get its numbers to where it needed to be, going to Houston Christian University to get its backup quarterback for this season, just to get a fourth body in the room. But it's gonna be a challenge moving forward for every program, especially with quarterback being that Cadillac position, and players getting 3-year deals for $5.1 million for a high school player. Just imagine what a quarterback who has 2 years under Ryan Day could potentially get in the portal to come in as a 1 year rental.
Got folks making the show about 10 minutes in. If you want the breakdown on Luke Fehee, just at the end of the show, obviously go all the way back to the start and catch up with everything we've got. Just to let you know, we got 2 commits for the Buckeyes this week. And then we've got Chip Brown from Texas 247 Sports joining us in about 10 minutes to break down Texas, Ohio State. All right. The timeline for defensive linemen a bit different, and the Buckeyes get one from the state of Ohio and one Jamir Perez, Kevin. And people don't like to see the ranking at 28th, but obviously with the offer sheet and the scouting could say something completely different.
Yeah, Jamir Perez, one-time commit to Florida. I think a lot of fans said maybe some ill things about him when he committed to Florida, and it's like, just you wait. He's probably not done yet. There's a lot of talk of this kind of being a Jerome Baker type of situation, committing to Florida on an emotional decision, and then after cooler heads and people around him kind of counseled him, ends up playing for the home team. with a player that's north of 350, it's really difficult, in my opinion, to be a 4-star or 5-star, because there's just unless you're like Braun Strowman in WWE or something like that, unless you're the Undertaker, there's not a lot of people with 350, 350 pounds, 360 pounds, and you're like, well, that's good weight. It's going to take a little bit of time to break him down and rebuild him, and that's not going to say that he's going to be playing college football at a yoked up 325 or anything like that. But there's going to need to be some time spent in reshaping his body and getting him to where he can play eventually 35, 40 snaps a game. We saw Tyleik Williams coming out of high school, coming out of the COVID year in Virginia, did not play a senior season. Tyleik admitted to himself that he spent a lot of time with his feet up on the sofa, eating chips and watching TV or playing video games or something like that. So, I think with Jamir, it's just going to be a matter of how quickly does he get into the weight and conditioning program, and how does his body respond to it? I mean, the good news is it's a lot easier for a 17-year-old to make those types of changes than a fat 53-year-old such as myself.
Or a fat 57-year-old such as myself too. But I think I saw Jamir at the Ohio State camp, and he seemed to have good mobility for a guy that size. And I think that you got to like what you see. I know that Mark is putting on the film here of Jamir in action. So let's see him there at 6'4", 330. I think there's some discourse whether he's 350, 340, 320, whatever he may be, but he's a big human being, that's for sure. And he showed me at the camp that he wants to be a good football player. That's kind of what I came back with, that he would, run his rep and get right up, listen to Larry Johnson, the other coaches about, what he can do to improve and put it to work. So that was impressive to me. Again, Glenville High School has been a pipeline for Ohio State, and it feels like it's starting to work out again with Sincere Johnson already in this class, and now Jamir Perez as well. So interested to see how his senior year goes at Glenville. Is he productive? Is he a guy that helps them win football games? Do they go deep in the playoffs? They're not a Division I team anymore. I think they're down in Division III or Division IV in the 7-division setup. So they have a chance to advance and maybe win some playoff games, and we'll see what kind of impact that Jamir Perez can have along the way. And then he'll come in and provide some much needed depth at defensive tackle. This is a position that the Buckeyes are kind of, over in the, if you had that meter that's over in the red level right now, that they really needed some depth over there at defensive tackle. So to me, a win all the way around to get an Ohio guy. Ohio doesn't produce, perhaps, like it should, but this is an example that he's a guy that can definitely help them, no doubt.
In terms of the excitement about him, I'll just say Ohio State fans should use the same amount of energy that they were using when he committed to Florida, and convert that anger, all of that energy that you use for anger that Ohio State lost in a Glenville kid, and then turn that frown upside down. I would say use that same energy to be happy, regardless of where he is ranked, because at one point people were very upset. So it must have meant a lot to you at the time. So let it mean the same to you now that he's going to be a Buckeye.
Folks, if you can't catch us on YouTube, we've got the audio available from all the Buckeyes live shows and all the other shows that live stream here on the Ohio State channel. Just look us up on your favorite audio platform.